The town where Chisom was born was alive with color and sound, a place where the past and present interwove like the threads of a fine tapestry. Stalls lined the market streets, their vibrant canopies flapping gently under the golden sun. The air carried the scent of roasted plantains, fried puff-puffs, and fresh spices that traders brought from distant lands. The ground, packed firm from the steps of countless feet, bore the marks of generations, traders, travelers, warriors, and healers who had walked those paths before her. Chisom's father, Ikin, was one of the town's most respected merchants. He had a booming voice that carried over the marketplace, a voice that could command a crowd yet soften when he told stories at night. He had a gift for trade, always returning from his journeys with goods that made people marvel, woven silks from the north, rare cowries from the coast, and beads so finely crafted they looked as if they were made by spirits. But his most cherished treasures were the stories he carried. Chisom, he would call when he returned from his travels, kneeling to scoop her up in his strong arms. "Come, let me tell you about the city where the walls shine like the midday sun." She would call beside him, her dark eyes wide with wonder as he spoke of places beyond the horizon. He told her of vast deserts where the wind sang over golden sands, of thick forests where spirits whispered in the trees, of great rivers that carried kings to their destinies. Chisom listened with rapt attention, her imagination soaring with each tale. Her mother, Nena, was different from her father. Where Ikin was fire, bold and full of energy, Nena was water, gentle and calming. She was the village healer, a woman whose hands knew the language of herbs and whose voice soothed even the most restless spirits. People came to her with fevers, wounds, and broken hearts, and she always knew what to do. She carried wisdom in her eyes and patience in her movements, her love flowing through her hands as she walked. Chisom often watched as her mother prepared remedies, carefully grinding leaves and mixing potions over a small fire. "Every plant has a spirit," Nena would say, guiding Chisom's tiny fingers over the rough bark of a tree. "And every spirit has a purpose." Their home was a place of warmth. It was not the grandest in the village, but it was filled with love. The walls were adorned with woven mats and beadwork, each piece telling a story. A clay pot always sat on the fire, its contents filling the air with a rich, savory aroma, sometimes a thick soup with dried fish, other times a pot of steaming jollof rice, its red-orange color vibrant as the sunset. Laughter often spilled from their doorstep, mixing with the sounds of the town beyond. On festival days, Chisom danced with the other children in the village square, her feet kicking up dust as the drummers played rhythms that made the earth tremble. Women moved in graceful circles, their wrappers swishing with every step, while men leaped into the air, their movements fierce and powerful. Her father clapped in time with the beat, cheering her on, while her mother watched with a soft smile, pride glistening in her eyes. At night, under the vast sky speckled with stars, Chisom would lie on a woven mat beside her parents, listening to their voices blend with the sounds of the crickets. Her father's arm would rest protectively around her shoulders, her mother's fingers tracing soothing patterns on her hair. Those were the moments Chisom cherished most, the feeling of safety, of love, of belonging. She dreamed of growing up to be like her parents, bold like her father, wise like her mother. She dreamed of traveling the world, of becoming a healer, of weaving stories into the fabric of time. She never once imagined a world where that warmth would be taken from her. But fate, like the unpredictable tides of the great river, had its own plans. The season of harmattan had arrived, bringing with it dry winds that coated everything in a thin veil of dust. The sun, though bright, seemed weaker, veiled by a hazy sky. Chisom sat outside her home, weaving a small mat for her father's return. He had been gone for weeks on a trade journey, and today, he was finally coming home. She remembered the morning he left, the way he had knelt before her, resting his large hands on her shoulders. "Be strong, my daughter," he had said. "Take care of your mother while I am gone." And she had. She had helped Nena prepare medicines, gathered firewood, and even haggled with a fisherman for the biggest catfish in the market. She wanted her father to see that she was growing, that she was ready to be just as strong and capable as he was. But fate had other plans. That evening, just as the sun melted into the horizon, a messenger arrived. He was breathless, his clothes torn, his face dark with soot and fear. The moment Nena saw him, She gripped Chisom's hand tightly. What is it? Where is the king? The man hesitated, swallowing hard before whispering, the caravan was attacked. Chisom's words shifted. The sounds of the village, the laughter of children, the distant pounding of fufu, faded into silence. Bandits, the man continued, his voice trembling. They came at night, on horseback. They took everything, killed many. He didn't need to finish. Nena let out a cry so raw, so filled with pain, that it tore through the air like a wounded animal. Chisom wanted to scream, to deny it, to run to the edge of the town and wait for her father to appear, smiling as he always did. But he never came. The days that followed were heavy with grief. Mourners came, bringing food and words of condolence, but nothing could fill the hollow space where Ikin's laughter used to be. Their once warm home felt colder, emptier. Nena, the woman who had always been a pillar of strength, became a shadow of herself. She stopped singing as she walked, stopped smiling when Chisom spoke. The light in her eyes dimmed, and soon, the illness began to creep into her bones. At first, it was just fatigue. Then came the cough, the fevers. The healer, the same woman who had once saved so many lives, was now unable to save her own. Chisom tried. She brewed the herbal teas, wiped the sweat from her mother's forehead, whispered words of comfort in the dark. But Nena only grew weaker. One night, as Chisom sat beside her mother, clutching her frail hand, Nena turned to her with tired, loving eyes. My daughter, you must be strong. Life is like the river, it changes, it flows, it carries us where we do not expect. But you must keep moving. Promise me. Chisom swallowed back her tears, nodding. I promise. Nena smiled weakly. She traced a gentle pattern on Chisom's palm, just as she had done when she was a child. Then, with a final, shuddering breath, she was gone. The home that had once been filled with warmth and love now stood in silence. The next morning, the village women came to prepare Nena's body, singing low, mournful songs as they wrapped her in white cloth. The burial was quick, simple. Chisom stood alone, staring at the mound of earth that now held both her parents. She was alone. She had no siblings, no close relatives in the village. The elders offered her a place in another household, but she refused. The home that had once been a haven now felt like a prison of memories. She could not stay. So, with nothing but a small bundle of belongings, Chisom left. She walked away from the only home she had ever known, her feet carrying her down the dusty path toward an uncertain future. The town that had once been filled with laughter and love now felt like a distant dream. And thus began her journey. The road stretched long before Chisom, a winding path of dust and uncertainty. She had never been outside her town alone before, and now, the world seemed too vast, too empty. The sky above her was endless, the trees whispered secrets she could not understand, and the nights were filled with shadows that moved like specters. At first, she wandered aimlessly, stopping in small villages where kind strangers offered her food in exchange for simple chores. She swept floors, carried water, helped elderly women grind melon seeds. But she never stayed long. Each place felt like borrowed time, and the weight of her grief made it impossible to call anywhere home. Then came the hunger. The villages were not always welcoming. Sometimes, people looked at her with suspicion, a lone girl, traveling with nothing but a small bundle of belongings. She learned that trust was not given freely, that kindness had its limits. On the nights when she found no shelter, she curled up beneath the wide branches of trees, shivering as the cold crept into her bones. Her stomach twisted with hunger, her body weakened with exhaustion. It was during one such night, huddled beneath an abandoned hut on the outskirts of a town, that she met Mama Ife, an elderly woman with a sharp tongue and knowing eyes. Who are you running from, girl? Mama Ife asked, squinting down at her. No one, Chisom murmured. Mama Ife snorted. Everyone is running from something. She offered Chisom food, a bowl of hot yam porridge, and a place to rest. Chisom, too hungry to refuse, ate in silence, the warmth spreading through her aching body. In the morning, Mama Ife set a task before her. If you want to eat, you work. That's the way of the world. Chisom scrubbed pots, fetched water, and tended to the small garden behind Mama Ife's hut. Days turned to weeks, and though the old woman rarely showed affection, Chisom felt a strange sense of stability. But Mama Ife was not just a simple village woman. She was a weaver, known for her intricate designs that told stories of ancestors and spirits. She worked late into the night, her hands moving like magic over the loom. One evening, she caught Chisom watching her. "You have nimble fingers," Mama Ife observed. "A girl like you needs a skill. Come." At first, Chisom fumbled, her hands clumsy, the thread slipping between her fingers. But Mama Ife was patient, and slowly, the patterns began to emerge, rows of carefully woven fabric, symbols of stories yet untold. For the first time in months, Chisom felt a purpose. She poured herself into the work, learning the art of dyeing, of spinning, of weaving intricate designs that spoke of hidden meanings. Each thread she wove carried her pain, her memories, her longing. And as she worked, she began to heal. But the past was never far behind. One afternoon, while delivering a finished cloth to the market, she overheard traders speaking of bandits attacking another merchant caravan. Her stomach twisted at the familiar tale, and suddenly, she realized her father's fate had not been unique. The world was full of danger, full of loss, full of people who took what was not theirs. That night, she sat by the fire and stared into the flames. "What do you want, girl?" Mama Ife asked, watching her closely. Chisom hesitated, then answered, "I don't know." Mama Ife nodded. "Then you must keep searching." And so, Chisom left once more, not because she was running, but because she was ready to build something new. She took the skills she had learned and traveled, seeking a place where she could carve out her own future. She no longer wandered aimlessly, she had a purpose. She would not be the girl who was left behind, the girl who lost everything. She would be something more. It was in this search that she found herself in a small riverside village. And it was there, beneath the shade of an ancient Iroquois tree, that she met Obinna. The river was unlike any place Chisom had ever seen. It was alive with the laughter of children, the scent of roasting yams, and the rhythmic sounds of pounding mortar. The people here did not carry the same hardened suspicion she had encountered elsewhere. They were warm, welcoming. For the first time in years, Chisom did not feel like a stranger. She found work quickly, weaving fabrics for the market. Her skill had sharpened under Mama Ife's teachings, and the villagers marveled at her intricate patterns, swirls of indigo and crimson, stories told in thread. They called her Noni Oka MMA, the woman with gifted hands. It was through her work that she met Obinna, the woodcarver. Obinna was unlike anyone she had ever known. He had strong, calloused hands, the kind that could shape life from wood, carving intricate masks and figures that seemed to breathe. He had a quiet strength about him, a patience that made even the restless winds pause. Their first meeting was unremarkable. He had come to barter a finely carved stool in exchange for a woven shawl. "You work with your hands, like me," he said, studying her patterns. Chisom only nodded. She had long since learned that words were often unnecessary. But Obinna was persistent. He noticed things, how she always sat alone under the Iroquois tree after the day's work, how her eyes carried a sorrow that no amount of laughter in the village could erase. He never pried, never asked the questions others might have. Instead, he left small offerings, a mango placed beside her weaving mat, a carved hairpin tucked into her belongings. She resisted at first. Love, to Chisom, had always been fleeting. Love was her father, who never returned home. Love was her mother, who faded before her eyes. Love was something that could be taken away in the blink of an eye. So she kept her distance. But Obinna was patient. He did not push, did not demand. He simply existed beside her, like the steady river that did not ask the land for permission to flow. He spoke in small gestures, in quiet acts of kindness. One evening, as the sun melted into the horizon, he found her sitting beneath the Iroquois tree, staring at nothing. Without a word, he sat beside her, pulling out a small wooden figurine, a woman with her head raised high, as if defying the wind. "For you," he said simply. Chisom traced the smooth curves of the carving, feeling the warmth of his work. She looks strong, she murmured. She is, Obinna said. Like you. Something inside her cracked. She did not respond, did not allow herself to feel the weight of his words. But that night, for the first time in years, she dreamed of something other than loss. As the weeks passed, their bond deepened. They worked side by side in the marketplace, her weaving, him carving. It was in these quiet moments that she began to realize that love did not always come in the form of grand declarations. Sometimes, love was simply presence. One evening, as they walked along the riverbank, Obinna finally spoke the words she had feared. I want to build a life with you, Chisom. She froze. The memories of all she had lost threatened to drown her. I don't know how, she admitted, her voice barely a whisper. Obinna turned to her, his gaze steady. Then we will learn together. But love, as she had always known, was never without resistance. Rumors began to swirl. She is not one of us, some whispered. She came from nowhere. She carries sorrow with her, what if she brings misfortune? Obinna faced them all with quiet defiance. I choose her, he said. And if you cannot accept that, then you do not truly know me. Chisom had spent years running, hiding, avoiding attachments. But here was a man who stood beside her, unwavering. A man who saw her not as a wandering soul, but as a woman deserving of love. And for the first time, she allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, love was not just something to be lost. It could also be found. As the village prepared for their union, Chisom stood beneath the iroko tree, tracing the figurine he had carved for her. This time, when she looked ahead, she did not see an uncertain future. She saw a home. A home she had chosen. A home she had built. The day of their union arrived with the golden kiss of dawn. The village armed with preparations, women pounding yam, men setting up wooden tables, children weaving flowers into long garlands. Smoke curled from cooking fires, carrying the scent of spicy jollof rice and roasted goat into the air. Chisom stood before the mirror, dressed in a deep blue wrapper embroidered with golden patterns. Her headpiece, adorned with coral beads, sat heavy on her braided hair. As she traced the intricate design of her woven shawl, the one she had made for this very day, her hands trembled slightly. She had spent so long running, so long guarding her heart against the pain of loss. But today, she was choosing love. Mama Ife's voice echoed in her mind, if you want to eat, you work. That's the way of the world. Chisom had worked. Not with her hands alone, but with her soul, with the careful, hesitant steps that led her to this moment. Outside, the village elder stood before Obinna, holding out a kola nut. This is the seed of life, the elder said. Bitterness in the beginning, sweetness at the end. May your journey be the same, strong and lasting. Obinna broke the kola nut, sharing it first with the elder, then with Chisom. It was tradition, but it was also a promise. Then came the palm wine ceremony. Chisom's heart pounded as she lifted the wooden cup, filled to the brim. Slowly, she moved through the crowd, her eyes locked onto Obinna. The villagers watched, murmuring blessings, waiting to see if she would complete the ritual. She reached him. He smiled, steady, sure. And then, with a deep breath, she knelt and offered him the cup. Obinna took it from her hands, drinking deeply before lifting her to her feet. The village erupted into cheers. Drums roared, feet stomped, voices lifted in song. Chisom was no longer an outsider, no longer the girl who wandered from place to place. She was home. That night, beneath the iroko tree, she and Obinna sat side by side, watching the firelight dance in the distance. I was afraid, she admitted softly. Obinna turned to her, his expression calm. And now? Chisom looked at him, the man who had seen past her walls, past her fears. The man who had waited, who had chosen her even when others doubted. Now, I am not, she whispered.
And so, Chisom and Obinna's love flourished, just as she had, rising from grief, leaving behind her past, and embracing the future she never thought possible. If you enjoyed this story, Don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel for more exciting tales like this.